going back a number of years, you had, and this was going back to the early years of the Islamic Republic, you had a number of assassinations of exiled dissidents on European soil, places like France. And one of the main things that caused that campaign to come to an end several years later was the concern by the regime about the nature of its relations with the Europeans. Now, since then, we've got all kinds of complicating issues, the nuclear issue, of course, being the big one, and the relationship is not good at all between the Iranian regime and the EU and the major European powers because of that. But I think there's still the hope among most elements of the regime to someday have a civilized and mutually profitable relationship with the Europeans, and that would be a source of hesitation. But right now, I think that the main concerns are, well, not so much concerns, but the main impulse on the part of the regime is to strike back at any kind of source of opposition at a time of vulnerability in the wake of the U.S. and Israeli attacks.
And that potentially puts a target on Albania, because there's no other countries hosting an opposition group like of this magnitude.
That's right. I mean, well, there would be, individual, other exiled dissidents who might be the targets of assassination in other countries. But in terms of a group that has an organizational presence, someplace, yeah, you're talking about the MEK in Albania. Perhaps the only thing that comes remotely close to that is that the monarchists who I mentioned before around Pahlavi have kind of a concentration of support in the Los Angeles area in the United States, but it's still not equivalent to the MEK, having its presence at a camp in Albania.
Now, I want to ask you another question as well. President Donald Trump's diplomacy. It's a bit of a different breed from maybe the other kinds of diplomacy that we're used to. Everyone goes and they have a meeting and they shake hands and they take a picture after, or they don't, or, we've figured out a way forward, we've got to work together. He doesn't take that sort of approach. Does it ever make you a bit nervous how he sort of speaks and threatens and the language he uses? I mean, there seem to be some results, but knowing what you know about the various players involved in these discussions, does it ever make you think, oh, maybe he's playing with fire, or that's a bit of a risk to take?
No, it's not just makes me nervous, it makes me dismayed. I mean, this applies not just to the issues we're talking about, but the whole corpus of foreign policy. And we've seen some of you say, well, it sometimes gets results. I mean, there are other results. You can look at polling numbers in which people in foreign countries are asked, what countries they respect or admire, or basically have a positive or negative opinion. And the U.S. poll numbers have plummeted since Trump came back to power. And you've got alliances that are totally wrecked. We have the Canadians next door who have been traditionally our closest and best friends, and Trump has made an enemy out of them. I mean, that's awful.
He threatened to invade Greenland, I mean, poor Greenland and Denmark. They weren't expecting that.
All that sort of nonsense. Yeah, there has been damage done to U.S. foreign policy and the U.S. standing in the world that will take many, many, many years to repair, even after Trump is no longer on the scene.
He said as well locally, that he'd managed to avert a war between Kosovo and Serbia as well. And, I don't know if that's true or not. It's maybe not your area of expertise, but it's just a dangerous game to be playing, with these big sort of authoritarian type characters who are somewhat unpredictable. That I include him in that description as well. It just seems it's a very fine line to walk between someone getting annoyed with him and pressing the nuke button, or managing to actually resolve the situation.
Well, yeah, in terms of, cavorting with dictators, then when you're in the European area, we're talking about a couple of regimes in particular, obviously Putin's. And, Trump has had this strange and as yet largely uncovered relationship with the Russians and with Putin's regime. Going back to before he was president, and he was seeking, to build, it's a real estate do real estate deals, in Moscow, that sort of thing. And then of course, there's the relationship with the Orban regime in Hungary, which is really kind of the bad boy of the European Union, and certainly, the biggest black mark among EU countries in terms of retrogressing from what had been a democracy into more of an authoritarian
Yes.
state.